Those strikes across those 9 terror hubs left more than 100 terrorists killed, including high-value targets such as Yusuf Azhar, Abdul Malik Rauf, and Mudassir Ahmed that were involved in the hijack of IC-814 and the Pulwama blast.
The difference here was that we had targeted the terrorists. The adversary now has targeted our civilians and the military infrastructure. So it had to be responded to.
Some of the airfields and dumps saw repeated attacks in waves from the air. All were thwarted.
Our aim was not to inflict casualties, but in case there have been, it is for them to count. Our job is to hit the target, not to count the body blanks.
To my counterpart, highlighting these violations of the understanding between the DGMOs on the 10th of May and our firm and clear intent to respond to these fiercely and punitively.
This time, if Pakistan dare take any action, and Pakistan knows it, what we are going to do.
In a dramatic display of power and precision, India has struck a decisive blow to Pakistan through what is being hailed as perhaps one of the most expansive military operations undertaken by India against Pakistan in recent times. Codenamed Operation Sindoor, the tri-service mission was launched in response to the brutal Pahalgam terror attack on April 22nd, which claimed the lives of 26 tourists and a local. Over a span of 4 days, starting May 7th, the Indian Army forces executed precision strikes targeting terror camps in both Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. These operations resulted in the elimination of over 100 militants, including key figures involved in the IC-814 hijacking and the Pulwama attack. When Pakistan did not learn its lesson and retaliated by attacking Indian military bases and civilian areas, which, as we all know, were successfully intercepted by India, India too responded by attacking 11 of Pakistan's air bases. Needless to say, India has inflicted significant damage on Pakistan, which finally prompted them to reach out for a ceasefire. Pakistan is believed to have reached out to the United States for urgent intervention after its military bases and strategic assets were pounded by India. US officials were already in contact with both sides in anticipation of escalating tensions and directed the Pakistan DGMO to activate its direct line to the Indian Army and avoid any delay. On May 10th afternoon at 3:35 p.m., the DGMOs of both sides had spoken and a ceasefire was put in place by 5 p.m. the same evening. Initially, there were reports of violation, but subsequently it was a night of calm in the border areas. Remember, India has repeatedly emphasized Operation Sindoor was never about revenge. It's about redrawing the lines of tolerance which Pakistan has continued to violate through the years. For example, the Indus Water Treaty has now been linked to terror, and it has been conveyed by the government that the treaty would remain abolished despite the ceasefire. The government has also conveyed a firm message that this is going to be the new normal post-Pahalgam, and there will be no business as usual. India has also exposed Pakistan as a terrorist hub globally and said that any future act of terror on Indian soil will be treated as an act of war. Now, while the military superiority has been established, war is more than just what military action entails. It's about psyops, it's about communication, it's about positioning. How has India fared there? To speak on this, I'm joined first in this special program by Harshvardhan Shringla, former Foreign Secretary. Ambassador Shringla, thank you so much for speaking with us on this very important topic, even as the fog of war and misinformation continues, because we live in an era of social media. And this is where India has to put its stance forth very, very clearly.
Absolutely. I think, we have made our position very clear in the wake of the attacks in Pahalgam on 22nd of April. Our very targeted, calibrated strikes on terrorist camps, I think, made a very telling point. What is very important is that our strikes were at the headquarters of the organizations that were directly responsible, not only for Pulwama, not only for Pelgam, but also for Pulwama in 2019. And also, of course, if you go back, it is linked to the IC 814 incident. And from that perspective, I think that the terrorists who have been involved with cross-border attacks into not just Jammu and Kashmir, but other parts of India as well, have faced very just retribution in the form of our strikes under Op Sindoor. And if you see the sort of high-value terrorists who were casualties of that strike, I think we have proved that we can go to the heart of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir to strike at terrorist targets at will. And so whether it is the headquarters of the Lashkar-e-Toiba or the Jaish-e-Mohammed or other terrorist groups, I think we have been able to pinpoint them, target them, and effectively neutralize them. So that is the first objective and the first message, that terrorists, wherever they are, will face just retribution. That is what Prime Minister Modi had assured the people of India when he spoke to them in Patna, in a public rally in Patna. And I think we have fulfilled that assurance that we will get those terrorists and those responsible for those attacks, at Pelgam. But subsequently also, and as part of that effort, there has not only been a response to Pakistani, I would say, attempts at targeting both our military infrastructure and civilian, targets in many parts of our country, right from the northern to the western borders of Pakistan. Our response has been very, very firm in that regard.
Yes.
We have demonstrated that we can hit targets deep inside Pakistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in all parts of Pakistan, with amazing accuracy. I think the sort of weaponry that we displayed on the 10th of May, when we hit 8 of their air bases and some radar sites, demonstrated that we had technology, we had the capabilities to penetrate Pakistani air defenses and hit them in different parts of their country with pinpointed accuracy. I think that is what really got them to intercede for a ceasefire. More importantly is the diplomatic and economic pressures that we have applied in Pakistan, including holding the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. I think all of these are part of an effort designed not only to deter terrorism, but also to preempt future terrorist acts in India. And I think that message has gone across very clearly to Pakistan.
Has that message been evenly put across the globe as well, Ambassador Shringal? Let me come back to that point about social media, about Western media narratives. And, we saw a lot of Indian diplomatic seniors come out and speak to international channels. The Pakistanis did the same. How important does that narrative also become?
Well, your narrative is very critical in today's day and age, where it's a completely interlinked world. Whether it is business, whether it is economies, whether it's people-to-people contacts, or even governments, the influence of public opinion and perception, not only within your country, but on a global basis, is very important. And we need to get our communications and our messaging across very clearly. And that is part of the effort. I think a number of our senior diplomats have gone, on various television channels and spoken out. I recall I'd done the same in 2019 in the wake of the Pulwama attack. And of course, I think it's important not only for official representatives to be conveying the message, but essentially at all levels, at academic, intellectual levels, to be able to get this message across about our point of view and what exactly is our sort of policy framework under which we are operating. And I think this is critical when it comes to conflict of this nature, where everything moves very fast. You need to be very, very proactive, and you need to be out there, conveying the big picture to audiences across the world. And I was fortunate because I did at least 3 or 4 interviews on BBC, Al Jazeera, and a number of international channels. And so did a lot of other people. But more of this is needed, I think, and we need to get our messaging across very quickly and very effectively.
Let's talk about the big T question. The announcement of the ceasefire coming from US President Trump, and then the whole, fog of war and parallel narratives about who called who has the upper hand, etc. How does India respond to all of this confusion and chaotic narrative that is being planned with clarity and determination?
No, I think a lot of information is now, coming across, and things are clearer than what they were on that particular day, on the 10th. It's clear that the US had been engaged at various levels. I mean, you saw that Vice President J.D. Vance at one stage said that this is really an issue that has to be dealt with bilaterally. There's not much we can do. These countries have to resolve their issues between themselves. I did interpret that as having given us the right to self-defense and right to do what we needed to do vis-a-vis Pakistan. But later, I think, obviously, with our let us say, responding very firmly to Pakistan's escalation, we have to keep in mind that we have always said that our objective has always been counterterrorism effort, right from the beginning. And even on the 7th, the night of 7th May, when we had the precision strikes on terrorist targets, after that, I'm told a message was sent to Pakistan through the DGMO channel to say that, look, we have hit at the terrorist infrastructure. We don't want to escalate it further. But from what we see, Pakistan, escalated it hugely, both on the night of 8th and the night of 9th May, by using high-speed missiles, drones, loitering munitions, fixed-wing aircraft against targets across India. On the 9th night, there were 26 locations that they attacked in this manner, but unsuccessfully, because our air defense is very effective. But our message has always been, and if you saw the press conference on the 9th evening, the Foreign Secretary also said, we are committed to peace. The onus on de-escalating lies with Pakistan. After all, they had escalated it severely to target not only civilians, but religious sites, schools, health centers, etc.
Yes.
And their escalation has been, completely disproportionate. So they needed to make the effort to de-escalate. And I believe after our, let's say, response on the 10th of May, on the morning of the 10th of May, when we were able to bomb 8 of their airfields
Yes.
and inflict severe damage, I think they realized that the game was up, and they went across and requested, a meeting of the DGMOs, and the rest is all known to us. And I think in that sense, it was a very strong message. I would say a combination of messaging, which involves both, psychological messaging, but also effectiveness on the battlefield, effectiveness of our armed forces to, I think, get our message across very, very clearly to Pakistan, that brought them to the table and got them to intercede for a cessation of fire.
So, I'm just going to come back on this again, because you see the chatter and the questions in people's mind. Military superiority, no question mark. At the end of the day, is it such a big deal that, Porters came out and tweeted it or put it on Truth Social first, and then the Indian establishment, the Indian army, and of course, came out and said that, yes, there is a ceasefire. Why are people harping on this? Does it matter that much is what I'm trying to understand.
Well, let's look at it this way. The United States is a friend of ours. They've been helpful to us. And we've been in touch with them throughout at senior levels during this entire incident, right from the terrorist attack at Pahalgam to the current stage. Obviously, there were some at a later stage some efforts at bringing our two sides together. President Trump himself is quite prolific when it comes to Twitter and when it comes to messaging on the social media. And there hasn't been too much on the Ukrainian front or on the Middle East front to talk about. But I think from his point of view, he basically perhaps jumped the gun, because they've spoken to the Pakistanis clearly, asking them also, and they would have got a sense from the Pakistani side that there has to be a move towards a ceasefire. And his announcement was made. I think there is no doubt that the US's role was a helpful role. But the fact of the matter is, this is a bilateral issue. It has to be dealt with by India and Pakistan. And this is not a matter that involves mediation or involves third-party involvement beyond some basic facts, as has been conveyed. One of the things we hear is that the US side was very clearly told at very senior levels that the only issue really now is the question of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir or the return of terrorists, to India. And there is no other issue that we need to discuss with Pakistan at this point of time. So there is obviously a fairly, from our side, a fairly correct and firm stance in the light of continued acts of terrorism, including the most heinous attack in Belgaum.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we will continue with, that firm stance with Pakistan, in dealing with Pakistan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we need to talk about the new red line we've drawn, but I'm told you have to go. So thank you so much, Ambassador Shringla, for speaking with us today. But I'm welcoming on Dilip Sinha, author and former ambassador, and of course, Dr. Tara Karta, former Director, National Security Council Secretariat, also joining me now on this conversation. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much. Mr. Sinha, let me start with that point to you specifically. The clarity that has now come and a new red line drawn, that acts of terror will be seen as an act of war. The importance of this change perhaps not percolating down yet. Explain to us and contextualize why this is key.
Yes, it's very important to understand this. India has maintained that it has the right to strike inside Pakistan, not merely in the occupied territories, that's the occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but in any part of Pakistan. There were times when we felt that we could cross the line of control, but not the international border. In the case of the Kargil war, we didn't even want to cross the line of control. But that hesitation that we had all these years, that has been completely set aside. And the other point that Pakistan has been maintaining, that its nuclear deterrent is what keeps India from crossing the international border. That bluff has been called, and India has established that it will strike regardless of the Pakistani threat of using its nuclear deterrence in case India attacks. So that these two principles have been established in this very brief 4-day war that we have had with Pakistan.
Dr. Tara Karta, that same point to you. So what happens hence on? How are those terms of engagement being redrawn if there is another terror attack? We're not waiting for this whole, dog and pony show. No, we didn't do it. We don't take responsibility, etc. We're going to look at it as an act of war and act accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's also a difficult one to implement because, as we've seen, Pakistan is not going to lay off. In fact, I think you can expect another terrorist strike pretty soon because there's a bunch of people who are furious as hell. So the question is, can we, meanwhile, also bring out the fact that call for sanctions on Pakistan? I mean, the whole US position seems to de-recognize the fact that there are terrorist camps which are mentioned clearly in UN documents. In the designated list, it's all there in black and white. Street names, what is the gully name, everything is there. And that is what we've hit. So there's no two questions that this is a terrorist scam that we've hit. But for whatever reason, the terrorism aspect has moved out of the international dialogue. And now it's all about Ukraine, it's all about war and Gaza and these major wars while we are made to bleed on terrorism. So, I think the message sent is pretty clear that we are not going to take this. And remember also that we had a sort of a civil defense exercise to back up that conviction that, listen, if you want to go to war, we are ready. Our people are ready. We are ready for anything you throw at us, but we don't want war. And that, I think, is what came out in the briefing which the DGMOs gave, that each step was taken with great deliberation.
Yeah.
So
In terms of just that one
control.
point, Dr. Karta, on the international conversation becoming about the big conflicts and not so much about terror, even this sense of false equivalence, right? We don't be hyphenated. It's not India-Pakistan. It's Pakistan's rogue state, India defending herself and setting the record straight. How do we make sure that this is not what comes out of it?
I think what the ambassador said earlier, I think is you had this whole thing of giving your version to the media outside, which we are not really doing as of now. Because much of this stuff which is coming from US academia seems to reflect the Pakistan position. We had somebody, I think, on your own channel who was saying, there was this reporter who said, yeah, I mean, they don't seem to understand that these camps have existed for years. I mean, look at the recent DGISPR, his conversation with the press. He says, jihad is what we live by. Can you imagine an army saying that? So where is this? It is not enough to outrage. We have to put this out into universities, into media abroad, and everywhere to make sure that this message with pictures, with data, and even the much quoted the folders that you have shared, that's not good enough. We have to get this into a research in terms of, because this is a unique war. Remember, this is absolutely unique that you hit under the nuclear threshold, you got your objective.
Yeah.
Let's study this war.
That's the thing, that we got our objective under the nuclear threshold. Ambassador Sinha, I'm going to come to you on that part because, in common parlance, the question, so what did we get out of this? We hit the air bases, destroyed terror camps, and ensured that a message was sent. Is there something else that we need to show?
Well, the struggle continues. The struggle against terrorism is not going to be an easy one. Partly because it's very difficult to control terror through military action. We have seen other countries try to do it. They have failed. So we have to understand that military action alone cannot control terrorism. And especially now, as Dr. Karta pointed out, the world's eye has been taken off terrorism and onto issues like Gaza and Ukraine and then the trade issues. So there is a bit of a problem internationally that we face. So we have to look at a longer-term strategy, apart from the action that we took just now to ensure that we sent a message across to Pakistan and that it cannot sit back and feel that India will not react to a terror attack inside India, and that whatever red lines Pakistan draws, we will respect those red lines. But having said that, we have to understand that there's a longer battle ahead of us, and that is how to deal with Pakistani terrorism. And here we have to look at a much larger issue of Pakistan's policies, Pakistan's own support of terrorism, and its own the manner in which it has fallen victim to its own terrorism, especially by the terror organizations that it spawned. They have started biting Pakistan. Now we have to exploit Pakistan's internal fault lines and tell the world that the terror organizations that Pakistan claims are terror organizations like the BLA and the TTP are no better or worse than the ones, for example, the ones that Pakistan says are freedom fighters, like the LET and the JEM. So if LET and JEM are jihadis and freedom fighters, so are the BLA and the TTP. And that is the message that we need to put across to the world, that the view of Pakistan in the world has to change. People have to understand what are the forces that created Pakistan.
Just Ambassador Sinha, your take on why America is so indulgent of Pakistan, because Donald Trump has not minced his words in the past. And, even the kind of funding that they're getting, using it to fuel terror, why the indulgence?
Well, that's an old story. That's an old story because you go back to the 1950s when Pakistan offered its territory for strategic purposes, and Pakistan has been using that all through. In the 1970s, when America wanted to reach out to China, Pakistan offered itself as a bridge between the US and China. The Pakistani army has proved very useful for the US in many ways. And there is also a view inside the US that in order to keep India in a certain degree of restraint, Pakistan is a very useful country to have. Then there's also the negative fear that Pakistan keeps touting to America, that if America does not help Pakistan, Pakistan will turn towards China. So America has the other problem that if they do not help Pakistan, then Pakistan will go completely into China's camp. So Pakistan takes full advantage
But
of
we
its
saw
geographical
we saw that in the
and of
weaponry. We
geopolitics.
saw that in the weaponry used. I mean, this is a story that's unfolding, and we've perhaps seen the first episode of it. But make no mistake that in that information warfare, which is following the military operations, you have to be very, very clear of what India has achieved. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on this show as we break down what's happening. And of course, to all of our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned. A lot more coming up on the other side on NDTV Profit.